So, to start off our deep dive today, I want you to put yourself in the absolute dead of winter. It is early in the year 878, and you are standing in a marsh.
Just freezing.
Literally freezing. The freezing rain is just relentlessly hitting the dark, murky water around you. The bitter wind is rustling through these thick reeds, and there is a tiny, sputtering fire that is, barely giving off any heat, let alone light.
Yeah, it's miserable.
Truly miserable. And if you listen closely, kind of muffled by the fog and the rain, you can hear an army on the move in the distance.
Right.
And right there, in the middle of this bleak, freezing mud in Somerset, which is down in the southwest of England, is a king.
Yeah.
He is hiding with a tiny, shivering band of followers. He's being hunted. I mean, his entire kingdom has been shattered.
It is the ultimate historical rock bottom. We are looking at a man who has lost his home, his army, his wealth, he has nothing left but the clothes on his back and the handful of loyal retainers standing next to him in the freezing water.
Right, and the stakes here are almost impossible to overstate. This isn't just like some minor noble down on his luck.
No, not at all.
This is Alfred, the King of Wessex. He is the last free king of the last free English kingdom.
And that army you hear in the distance, that's the Great Heathen Army.
The Vikings.
Exactly, the Vikings. They have devoured the rest of the country.
Yeah.
I mean, Northumbria, Mercia, East Anglia, they have all been swallowed whole by the Norse.
Yeah, Wessex was the final holdout, and it has fallen.
It's gone.
So this moment in the reeds, it's the flickering, dying light of Anglo-Saxon England. If you were standing there looking at him, you would assume the Norse had won forever. The language, the church, the culture, all of it is seemingly about to be just erased.
Yeah, by all the normal rules of history. This is the part of the textbook where the page turns, right? And we start reading about the complete Norse domination of the British Isles.
But that is the entire mission of our deep dive today. Because from this muddy rock bottom, this desperate fugitive is going to pull off a miraculous comeback.
Oh, it's incredible.
He rallies his broken people, defeats the most terrifying military force of his era, and then lays the groundwork for a country that didn't even exist yet, which is England.
Right.
We are unpacking the story of the only English monarch in history to earn the title the Great.
It is the story of how total catastrophe becomes the crucible for something entirely new.
Exactly. So to understand how he gets out of this freezing swamp, we really have to look at how he got there in the first place.
Yeah, his background is fascinating.
It is, because the crazy thing about Alfred is that he was never supposed to be king.
Not at all.
He was born around the year 849, and he was the youngest of several sons of the King of Wessex.
Which means a lot in that society.
Right. In a medieval warrior aristocracy, being the youngest of several capable brothers means you are not being groomed to lead the shield wall.
No, your life path is generally determined for you. You are likely destined for the church, or perhaps you'll manage some royal estates.
Yeah.
You are essentially a highly privileged backup plan.
A backup plan. I like that. And Alfred fit that non-warrior mold perfectly. He was a very bookish, thoughtful, deeply curious child.
Very unusual for his time.
Super unusual. He actually went on a pilgrimage to Rome when he was just a boy.
Which is a huge journey.
Massive. I was reading about that journey, and it strikes me how profoundly that must have shaped his worldview. I mean, think about it. A young Anglo-Saxon boy from the rural wooden halls of Wessex traveling across the Alps to see the colossal stone ruins of the Roman Empire.
It must have been mind-blowing.
Right. He saw aqueducts, massive basilicas, a level of systemic civilization that his own people had completely forgotten how to build.
Yeah, that exposure to the remnants of a unified, highly organized empire, it definitely planted a seed. In a society that basically worshipped broad-shouldered men who could swing a heavy piece of iron, Alfred was absorbing the concept of infrastructure.
Infrastructure, yes. And that intellectual curiosity really shines through in this one specific detail from the source.
Oh, the poetry book.
Yes. When he was young, his mother showed him and his brothers this beautiful, illuminated book of poetry, and she offered to give the book to whichever brother could memorize it the fastest.
Which is a brilliant parenting move, by the way.
Right. And Alfred, the youngest, takes the book to his teacher, completely devours it, memorizes the verses, and recites it back to win the prize.
That story points to a fundamental truth about his hardwiring. It highlights this mental agility and an intense appreciation for the written word.
Yeah.
And you have to keep in mind, this is a culture where illiteracy was the absolute norm, even among the highest nobility.
Wow, really? Even the kings?
Oh, yeah. Most of them couldn't read. So that competitive intellectual drive made him a total outlier.
But then, the Great Heathen Army crashes into this quiet, bookish life.
Everything changes.
The Vikings start tearing through the country, and a terrifying pattern emerges for his family.
Yeah, it's brutal.
His older brothers take the throne one by one, ride out to fight this unstoppable Norse tide, and they die young, just ground down by a relentless war of attrition.
Yeah, just chews them up.
And it culminates in the bloody year of 871. His last surviving older brother, King Ethelred, dies.
So it all falls to him.
Exactly. Alfred inherits a doomed throne at just 21 or 22 years old.
A young intellectual handed a disintegrating kingdom.
Which raises a massive question. I mean, his society is screaming out for a warlord, a giant guy with a battle axe to meet violence with violence.
Right.
Initially, his bookishness must have looked like a massive liability. If you're a frightened farmer in Wessex, you want a terrifying warlord to protect you, not a scholar.
For sure. The instinct in a crisis is always to look for physical strength. But his intellectual foundation proved to be the specific weapon that saved the kingdom.
How so?
Well, the Vikings were exceptional at tactical warfare, right? The immediate clash, the surprise raid, the sheer brutality of the moment. If Alfred had just been another warlord, he would have fought them on their terms and lost, just like his brothers did.
Because they were just better at that kind of warfare.
Exactly. But because he had that mental agility from studying poetry and observing Roman ruins, he had the unique capacity to think systemically.
Okay, so he didn't just look at a battlefield. He looked at the entire logistical reality of his kingdom.
Precisely.
He looked at cause and effect. He stepped back and asked why his armies were constantly outmaneuvered rather than simply trying to, swing a sword harder.
Yeah, that ability to step outside the immediate violence and design macro-level systems is what ultimately dismantles the Vikings' superpower.
But systemic thinking takes time to implement.
And he doesn't have time.
No, early on he doesn't have any time at all. The first years of his reign are just a brutal war of survival.
Yeah, it's a total grind.
He is forced to rely on the Danegeld strategy, which we've seen in other deep dives. It is essentially extortion.
Yeah, it literally translates to Dane gold. You pay the Vikings a massive sum of silver to go away and not attack your lands.
It's a protection racket.
Totally.
You weigh out thousands of pounds of silver, hand it over, and they sail away for a season. But they inevitably run out of money, realize you are a soft target with deep pockets, and come right back.
Every time.
It buys Alfred a tiny bit of breathing room, but Wessex is just bleeding out economically.
The silver drain hollows out the kingdom's ability to sustain itself.
And then, catastrophe strikes in early 878. A Viking leader named Guthrum does something that breaks all the unwritten rules of medieval warfare.
Oh, this is the turning point.
He launches a massive surprise attack in the dead of winter.
Which is insane. Winter campaigning was practically unheard of in the 9th century.
Why is that? Just the cold?
Well, the cold, yeah, but the logistical hurdles were considered insurmountable. The dirt roads turned to impassable mud.
Right.
There was no forage in the fields to feed your horses, and no crops for your soldiers to steal. Armies generally went into winter quarters and simply waited for the spring thaw.
Wow. So Guthrum uses that exact assumption against Alfred. Alfred is staying at a royal estate in Chippenham, celebrating the religious holiday of Twelfth Night. He believes he is entirely safe.
Because why wouldn't he?
Exactly. But Guthrum's forces burst out of the freezing fog and overrun the estate.
It's a total rout.
Alfred barely escapes with his life, fleeing into the wilderness as his royal household is completely scattered. His nobles either surrender to the Vikings or they flee across the ocean to Europe.
Yeah, they just abandoned him.
And Alfred ends up isolated in the marshes of Athelney, which brings us right back to that opening scene.
And in that void of power, the Anglo-Saxons generated one of the most enduring legends in their history.
Yes, the legend of the burnt cakes. I have to talk about this.
It's a classic.
So the story goes that Alfred is in disguise, wearing dirty peasant clothes, hiding from Viking patrols. He knocks on the door of a humble peasant woman's hut in the swamp and asks for shelter.
And she has no idea he's the king?
No clue. She lets him sit by the fire to warm up, but asks him to watch some cakes or, loaves of bread baking on the hearth while she goes to do some chores.
A menial, incredibly simple task.
Right. But Alfred sits there staring into the flames, completely consumed by the doom of his kingdom.
Yeah.
He is agonizing over how to save his people, and he completely zones out. The cakes catch fire and burn to a crisp.
Naturally.
The peasant woman returns, sees her ruined food, and absolutely unloads on him. She screams at him, calls him a lazy, useless idiot,
The King of Wessex.
the anointed king, and Alfred simply bows his head. He accepts the harsh scolding and never reveals his true identity.
It's such a great story. Though most historians agree this specific event likely never happened, at least not exactly as it was written down generations later.
Oh, really?
Yeah, probably a myth.
Yeah.
But what matters is the psychological profile the Anglo-Saxons chose to project onto their greatest king.
That's a good point. They could have invented a story where he, I don't know, slays a pack of wolves in the swamp, but they chose a story where he gets yelled at by a baker.
Exactly. It shows profound humility. He is brought as low as a human can go, and he accepts the indignity without his ego intervening.
Wow.
More importantly, it illustrates his total preoccupation with the suffering of his people. He wasn't brooding over his lost wealth or his wounded pride. He was carrying such an immense strategic burden that the physical world around him just ceased to exist.
It is a deeply humanizing myth. Oh, and as a natural aside, if you've ever watched the TV show Vikings,
Oh yeah, great show.
their portrayal of Alfred captures this exact vibe beautifully. They show him with this intense Christian devotion, this quiet, suffering intellect.
Yes, they nailed that contrast.
He isn't screaming for blood like the Sons of Ragnar. He is a steadfast, immovable counterweight to all that Norse chaos. The show really nails the feeling of a man willing to endure any personal torment to protect his flock.
It's a great portrayal because the Viking ethos is entirely about outward projection.
Yeah.
Glory, volume, physical dominance. Alfred's strength, both historically and culturally, is internal endurance.
Internal endurance. I love that. So the king is sitting in the mud, smelling like burnt bread. His kingdom is occupied.
Right.
The easiest choice in the world would be to just quit.
Absolutely.
I mean, many of his nobles had already sailed to the continent, to Francia, to live a comfortable life in exile.
And that decision, to stay in the freezing mud rather than flee, is the hinge upon which the history of the English-speaking world turns.
Really?
Yeah, his conscientious nature simply would not allow him to abandon his people. He felt a moral obligation that superseded his own survival.
So he decides to fight back, but, he can't face the Great Heathen Army with a dozen guys in a marsh.
No, that would be suicide.
He has to use Athelney as a hidden base. It is an island of solid ground in the middle of treacherous tidal wetlands that the Vikings just don't know how to navigate.
It's basically a fortress made of water and mud.
Right. And he builds a rudimentary timber fortress there and initiates a guerrilla war.
Classic asymmetric warfare.
Exactly. He launches lightning-fast, hit-and-run raids on Viking foraging parties, keeping them constantly off balance. But the most crucial part of his strategy is completely invisible to Guthrum.
The communication network.
Yes. He sends secret messengers slipping through the Viking lines in the dead of night. They navigate the occupied shires, Somerset, Wiltshire, Hampshire, seeking out the loyal local leaders, the ealdormen.
And think about the logistics of that in the 9th century.
How do you even do that?
Right. How do you authenticate a message? You don't have encrypted emails. You rely on whispered passwords, signet rings, the sheer trust in a recognized face. He is whispering into the ear of his occupied country. The king is in the shadows. Be ready.
That gives me chills. The king is in the shadows.
The operational security required for that is staggering. If one messenger talks or, one local leader decides to betray him to Guthrum for a reward.
The rebellion ends instantly.
Instantly. The fact that the secret held speaks volumes about the loyalty he commanded.
And it pays off. Spring arrives. It's May 878. The swamp thaws, and Alfred emerges from the fens.
Here we go.
He rides to a secret rendezvous point in the forest called Egbertstone, and the local militias actually step out of the trees.
It must have been an incredible scene.
The sources say the men were weeping with joy to see their king alive. They genuinely thought he had perished in the winter.
Yeah, they thought he was dead.
And suddenly, the guerrilla fighter has a real army again.
And Alfred immediately takes this newly formed, highly motivated force on the offensive. He marches directly toward Guthrum's main army, leading to the decisive Battle of Edington.
And this is a pitched battle, relying on the quintessential Anglo-Saxon military formation.
The shield wall.
The shield wall. Can you explain that a bit?
Oh, the mechanics of the shield wall are terrifying. Thousands of men stand shoulder to shoulder, overlapping heavy wooden shields to create a physical barrier of wood, leather, and iron.
just a solid wall of men.
Right. And spears thrust out from the gaps. It is a brutal, claustrophobic shoving match.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
The sensory experience, the crush of bodies, the smell of sweat and iron, the sheer physical exertion of holding the line while an enemy tries to batter you down,
Yeah.
it requires immense psychological discipline.
Because if you panic.
If one man breaks ranks out of fear, the wall splinters, the enemy pours into the gap, and the slaughter begins.
But Alfred's men hold the line.
They hold it.
They grind the Vikings down in an agonizing, slow crush. The Viking discipline finally shatters, and they run.
They break.
Alfred's forces pursue them relentlessly to their fortified stronghold at Chippenham and lay siege to it. And Alfred is uncompromising here. He cuts off their food and their water.
No mercy.
None. After 2 weeks, the mighty Viking warlord Guthrum is starving, and he surrenders.
The reversal of fortune is staggering. I mean, a fugitive in January becomes a victorious conqueror in May.
It's unbelievable. He wins the battle. He has the Viking warlord who ruined his life starved and defeated.
Yeah.
But he doesn't execute him.
Nope.
He forces Guthrum to convert to Christianity, and Alfred acts as his godfather.
Yep.
Okay, I have to push back here. Wait,
It seems crazy, I know.
how is dunking a Viking warlord in holy water a sound military strategy? Guthrum literally tried to assassinate him in his sleep a few months prior.
It sounds incredibly naive to a modern listener. But we have to view the world through Alfred's logistical and political framework.
Okay, explain.
The Norse weren't just a military threat. They represented an existential chaos outside the bounds of sworn, civilized behavior. By forcing Guthrum into the baptismal font, Alfred is binding him into a legal, cultural, and spiritual framework that Alfred himself controls.
He is forcing Guthrum to speak his diplomatic language.
Exactly. When you are baptized in the 9th century, you take sacred oaths.
Yeah.
You enter into a spiritual kinship.
Right.
By acting as godfather, Alfred establishes a strict hierarchy. He becomes the spiritual father and Guthrum the son.
Wow, that's a massive power play.
It is. They are now operating under the same set of rules. Alfred isn't foolish enough to trust Guthrum completely, but he calculates that this sworn bond will buy Wessex something far more valuable than the fleeting satisfaction of revenge.
What's that?
It buys them time.
Time to rebuild the kingdom.
Exactly.
And along with the baptism, they negotiate a massive treaty. They draw a literal line across the map of Britain, following old Roman roads like Watling Street and the River Thames.
It literally cuts the country in two.
Everything to the north and east is ceded to the Vikings and becomes known as the Danelaw. Everything to the south and west remains English under Alfred,
He officially gives up half the country.
which is a tough pill to swallow.
But it is a profound recognition of geopolitical reality. Alfred understands he cannot exterminate the Norse. They are too entrenched, their numbers too vast.
Yeah.
Rather than fighting a forever war that will eventually bleed Wessex dry, he builds a geopolitical fence.
Right. And bringing up the Vikings TV show again, the later seasons do an incredible job portraying this messy, negotiated reality.
They really do.
It wasn't a clean war of extermination. It was
Yeah.
a complex, uncomfortable entanglement. They had to live next door to each other, engage in trade, and constantly watch their borders.
Because treaties break. The Vikings were notorious for taking an oath on a holy ring one day and raiding a coastal village the next.
Exactly.
Alfred knows the Danelaw is a loaded weapon pointed directly at Wessex.
So treaties are just paper. He needs physical insurance.
And this is where his systemic thinking shifts into overdrive.
Right. So he re-engineers the entire defense of the country.
Yeah, if you analyze the Viking threat objectively, their primary advantage is mobility.
Those ships.
Right. They arrive from the sea in incredibly fast, shallow draft-long ships. They strike a target before the local militia can even mobilize, steal the wealth, and vanish.
So to defeat them, you have to neutralize their speed, which means he realizes he can't chase them.
No, you'll never catch them.
So he takes away the open space by building the burhs. I was looking at how these were structured, and it looks like a giant grid of fortresses.
The burhs were a network of fortified garrison towns mathematically plotted across Wessex.
Mathematically plotted.
Yes. Alfred didn't just build castles at random. He utilized a document known as the Burgle Hidage.
Okay, what is that?
It was a highly sophisticated mathematical formula. It calculated that 4 men were required to defend every pole, which is about 5.5 yards of wall.
Wow, that's specific.
The document lists the towns and the exact number of hides of land needed to support the garrisons. He measured the landscape and placed these burhs so perfectly that no single farm or village in the kingdom was more than a single day's march, about 20 miles from a fortress.
Oh my gosh, it functions exactly like a cellular network, but for medieval defense.
Exactly. There are no dead zones.
Right. So if a Viking fleet lands on the coast, the local population doesn't scatter into the woods to be hunted. They run inside the walls of the nearest burh.
And the wealth goes inside, the livestock goes inside, and the massive timber gates close.
And the Vikings despised prolonged sieges, right?
They hated them. Suddenly, they're stuck outside looking at heavily defended walls, while the garrison inside sends riders to the neighboring burhs to coordinate a massive counterattack.
It completely flips the tactical script.
It neutralizes their entire way of making war.
It is brilliant. If you look at a map of England today, you can still see this 9th century defense grid.
Oh, absolutely.
All those town names ending in Bursbury, Curranborough, or Burr-like Canterbury, Shaftesbury, Marlborough, those were Alfred's fortified burhs.
But, walls require men to stand on them. Which brings us to the logistical nightmare of the Anglo-Saxon military, the burhyard.
The burhyard, the old militia system.
Right.
It was made up of free farmers who owed military service to the king. I can see the immediate flaw here.
Yeah, it's pretty glaring.
If a Viking army attacks in July, but the wheat needs to be harvested in August, those men are going to abandon the shield wall and go home.
Because if they don't, their families starve in the winter.
Exactly. You cannot fight a sustained multi-month campaign when your army keeps melting away to tend to agriculture.
Right. So Alfred solves this by splitting the burhs in half.
Oh, wow.
He mandates that at any given time, half the men are on active military duty, garrisoning in the burhs or patrolling the field, while the other half are home tending the farms.
And then they rotate.
And coordinating a massive kingdom-wide rotation without standardized calendars, clocks, or mass communication is an administrative triumph.
How did they even keep track?
It relied on lunar cycles, local ealdormen enforcing the shifts, and absolute discipline. The fields get harvested, the economy survives, and the king always possesses a standing army ready to fight.
And he doesn't stop at land defenses either.
No, he looks to the sea.
He realizes the ultimate way to beat the Vikings is to intercept them on the water before they ever hit the beaches.
Which is incredibly ambitious.
Right. He commands the construction of new, larger ships. The sources indicate they were twice as long as the Viking longships, sitting higher in the water, designed for stability and boarding rather than shallow water raiding.
He creates a dedicated naval force, earning him the somewhat generous historical title as the father of the English Navy.
Think about the magnitude of this transition. He goes from a fugitive hiding in a tidal marsh to a king who has proactively designed a durable, crisis-proof infrastructure.
It's a total paradigm shift.
When the Vikings return in massive numbers later in his reign, they hit this newly designed system and just bounce off. They cannot crack the burrs. The machine he built works perfectly.
He transitioned entirely from crisis management to institutional design.
Okay, so the physical borders are secure, the walls are high, the army is rotated, the ships are patrolling.
Yep.
But Alfred looks around his safe kingdom and realizes an entirely different threat has already breached the walls.
The internal decay.
Right. The physical kingdom is safe, but the culture inside it is dying.
He recognized an invisible crisis that was arguably more destructive than the physical raids.
How so?
Well, the Vikings hadn't just stolen silver. They had incinerated the intellectual infrastructure of the country. They targeted monasteries for their wealth, but in the medieval world, monasteries were the schools, the libraries, and the publishing houses.
Oh, wow. It is the equivalent of burning down the servers holding all the data of Western civilization.
That is a perfect analogy. Entire libraries of irreplaceable vellum manuscripts were turned to ash. The clergy who knew how to read, write, and teach were either slaughtered or had fled.
So the knowledge is just gone.
Alfred writes an incredibly mournful letter describing this cultural devastation. He laments that there is almost no one left in England, south of the River Thames, who can translate a simple letter from Latin into English.
Which means they're suffering civilizational amnesia.
Exactly.
I mean, Latin was the language of the law, of the church, of diplomacy, of history. If you lose Latin, you lose your connection to the wider world and your own past.
So to combat this, Alfred decides to learn Latin himself.
Wait, really? That detail is astonishing.
It's wild.
Alfred is fighting wars, designing ships, calculating the burglehidage, and he decides to learn a complex dead language as an adult.
Yes.
The sheer cognitive load of trying to master Latin grammar by candlelight while managing a wartime kingdom is incredible.
It speaks to his intense drive.
He does this because he wants to personally translate or direct the translation of key philosophical and historical texts from Latin into spoken Old English.
He argues that these specific books are, quote, most necessary for all men to know.
Most necessary.
He wants knowledge democratized. He wants his ealdormen, his judges, and his nobles to be able to read these texts in their mother tongue.
So he builds a team.
Right. He gathers scholars from across Britain and the continent, bringing them to his court to create an intellectual think tank.
A 9th century brain trust.
Yeah.
The logistics of medieval translation are fascinating, too. It wasn't just typing on a keyboard.
Oh, no, not at all.
It involved dictating to scribes, etching into wax tablets, scraping vellum, and painstakingly copying text by hand.
And the books he selects for this massive undertaking are revealing. He translates Pope Gregory the Great's Pastoral Care, which is a manual on how to be an ethical, responsible leader.
Okay, that makes sense.
And he translates Boethius' Consolation of Philosophy, a text focused on finding inner peace and resilience in a chaotic, suffering world.
Wow. It makes complete sense that a man who spent his life fighting Vikings while battling a chronic illness would connect with a book about finding peace amidst suffering.
It's very personal.
He is essentially providing his leadership team with a curriculum on how to rebuild a broken society.
And alongside the translations, he issues a massive new law code. He synthesizes the old laws of previous Anglo-Saxon kings, integrates them with Christian principles, and creates a unified code of justice.
And perhaps most significantly for how we understand this history today, he funds the creation of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle.
Which is a monumental logistical achievement.
Tell me about that.
It is a year-by-year record of English history, written not in Latin, but in English. It was copied in scriptoriums and distributed to monasteries all over the kingdom.
I read that they would literally chain these massive books to the altars so they couldn't be stolen, and monks would update them annually with the events of the year.
We wanted to make sure the record survived.
He is actively manufacturing a national memory for his people.
The philosophical realization here is profound. Alfred understands that a kingdom is more than just geography and walls.
Right.
A kingdom is bound together by shared language, shared faith, shared law, and shared memory. If the people don't know who they won't understand what they are fighting to protect.
Wow.
The Burrs kept them safe from Viking swords, but the learning, the law, and the history gave them a reason to survive.
And by creating this shared cultural identity, he accidentally sets the stage for something massive.
He really does.
Because before the Vikings arrived, England did not exist. There was no single nation. It was a heptarchy, a collection of rival independent kingdoms like Mercia, Northumbria, and Wessex. They spoke similar dialects but were constantly at war with one another.
The Great Heathen Army functioned like a devastating forest fire. It burned away centuries of complex political undergrowth.
Clean the slate.
Yeah, it wiped Northumbria off the map. It destroyed East Anglia. It dismantled Mercia. It left nothing but a clean, scorched slate with Wessex as the sole surviving native power.
So as Alfred secures his borders and looks at the map, he realizes he isn't just the king of Wessex anymore. He is the last English king, period.
And he seizes that opportunity. He begins to employ a brilliant piece of political branding.
Branding, really?
Yes, he starts presenting himself as the protector of all the English people. He heavily utilizes the term angelson, the English kind.
The English kind.
He projects the message that old tribal divisions no longer matter. Whether you were Mercian or West Saxon, you are now part of the angelson, united against the heathen threat.
That's incredibly smart.
He even claims sovereignty over the English people trapped living under Viking rule in the Danelaw.
So he is planting the flag for a nation that hasn't fully materialized yet.
Exactly.
He puts the idea into the cultural consciousness. We are one people. And his descendants take that idea and make it a physical reality.
They finish the job.
His son, Edward the Elder, and his grandson, Ethelstan, utilize the machine Alfred built, the Burrs, the standing army, the unified culture, and go on the offensive.
They push back.
Over the subsequent decades, they systematically conquer the Danelaw, absorb those territories, and forge the very first unified country of England. Ethelstan is actually crowned the first king of the English.
The creation of England is the direct culmination of Alfred's vision and infrastructure.
The historical irony here is staggering to me.
It really is.
The Vikings crossed the sea to conquer, extract wealth, and destroy. But by wiping out all the rival Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, they inadvertently cleared the political board.
Right.
They forced the English to unite under a single king just to survive. The Vikings forged the unity of the English nation in the fire of their
Just
invasion?
not intentionally, of course.
Completely unintentionally. Without the pressure of the Great Heathen Army, the island might have remained a fractured mess of small kingdoms for centuries.
The Norse believed they were dismantling the Anglo-Saxon world, but they served as the catalyst that forced it to evolve into a unified state capable of surviving and eventually projecting global power.
Okay, so we've explored the massive achievements, right? The military systems, the philosophical translations, the nation
The
building.
big picture stuff.
Yeah. Let's slow down and look at the actual human being carrying this impossible weight. Because we rarely get a glimpse into the intimate daily lives of ninth century figures, but Alfred is an exception.
A huge exception. We possess this incredible level of detail because of a man named Asser.
Who was he?
Asser was a Welsh monk and scholar whom Alfred recruited to join his intellectual court, and Asser wrote a contemporary biography of Alfred while the king was still living.
Oh, wow.
Now, we must read it with a critical eye. It is essentially authorized public relations written by an employee, but it provides personal insights that simply don't exist for figures like Ragnar or Ivar.
Right, and the most shocking revelation in Asser's biography concerns Alfred's physical health.
This changes everything about how you view him.
It really does. We tend to visualize medieval kings as robust, barrel-chested warriors.
Guys swinging huge swords.
Exactly. But Asser reveals that Alfred suffered from a chronic, incredibly painful, lifelong illness.
Yeah, medical historians have debated the exact nature of the affliction for decades.
So what do they think it was?
Well, the descriptions. Sudden, agonizing pain, often striking during feasts or public events, point heavily toward a severe chronic digestive disorder, most likely Crohn's disease or perhaps painful fistulas.
Oh my God.
It was a relentless physical torment that he endured every single day of his adult life.
Just imagine the sheer physical agony of riding a horse into battle, wearing heavy chainmail, and fighting in the claustrophobic crush of a shield wall, all while your own digestive tract is tearing you apart from the inside.
It's unbearable.
Imagine trying to concentrate on translating complex Latin metaphors into English while managing chronic, unmedicated pain. It completely recontextualizes his achievements. He built a nation while constantly sick.
And in the medieval mindset, illness was often viewed as a divine test or a punishment.
Oh, right, because they didn't understand the science.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So Asser's portrait shows a man who internalized this, becoming highly anxious and deeply conscientious. He was constantly worried he was failing his duty to God, to the church, to the poor, and to the law.
He carried the moral weight of his entire civilization on his shoulders.
He micromanaged his kingdom's justice system, personally reviewing the judgments of local officials to ensure they weren't exploiting the vulnerable.
The contrast with the Viking ethos we've explored in previous deep dives is striking.
It's night and day.
The Viking mindset prioritized explosive, flashy greatness. It was about sailing into the unknown, swinging an axe, and securing a glorious death so poets would sing your name in Valhalla.
And Alfred's greatness is the absolute inverse.
Yeah.
It is a quiet, agonizing endurance. It is the greatness of staying awake at night, agonizing over the spiritual and physical safety of your people.
Right.
It is the tedious, unglamorous grind of calculating wall measurements for a fortress, writing a law code, or translating a book, day after painful day.
A leader who refuses to let his physical frailty dictate his duty. He simply refused to fail his people, which perfectly frames the final assessment of his legacy.
The big question.
Right. Out of all the monarchs in English history, all the Henrys, the Edwards, the Elizabeths, why is Alfred the only one to earn the title the Great?
The source material supports 4 foundational pillars for that title.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, he saved his kingdom from absolute extinction. When he was shivering in that marsh in 878, Anglo-Saxon England was one bad day away from being permanently erased from history. He brought it back from the brink.
Unquestionably. What's the second?
Second, he didn't just win a war. He engineered lasting, durable systems. He transitioned from reacting to crises to institutional design with the burghs, the naval fleet, and the rotating army.
And the third?
Third, he was a genuine intellectual who wielded both the sword and the pen. He rescued the English language and its intellectual heritage from the ashes of the Viking raids.
And fourth?
And fourth, he laid the blueprint for the nation of England. He took the conceptual idea of the English people and forged it into a political reality.
If we place Alfred in the context of the larger narrative we've been exploring this season, we have spent considerable time examining the Norse conquerors.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of grounds.
Ragnar Lothbrok's legendary visions, Ivar the Boneless's tactical ruthlessness, Bjorn Ironside in the Mediterranean, Rollo taking Normandy. We've seen this incredible gallery of human ambition bursting out of Scandinavia to set the world on fire.
And Alfred is the necessary adversary.
He is the immovable object that finally met the unstoppable force.
Exactly. Studying Alfred proves that the Vikings didn't just roll over a helpless Europe. They were terrifying and brilliant. But in the muddy marshes of Wessex, they met their match in a sickly, anxious scholar king who simply outthought them and outlasted them.
You cannot fully comprehend the Viking Age without understanding the man who defined the limits of their expansion.
You really can't.
As we close out this deep dive into Alfred the Great, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Always a good idea.
Consider the profound paradox of destruction and creation. We view the Viking invasions as an apocalyptic tragedy of fire and blood that destroyed centuries of culture.
Because they were.
But if the Great Heathen Army had never arrived to burn everything down, if they hadn't wiped the map clean of all those squabbling rival kingdoms, would the distinct, unified nation of England ever have been born?
It is the ultimate historical paradox.
Does it take an apocalypse to forge a civilization? Does the fire that burns the forest also plant the seeds for something stronger?
That's something to think about.
Well, that concludes our deep dive into the leaders of this era. Next time, we are changing the lens completely. We are moving away from biographies and zooming in on the great events.
I can't wait for this one.
Next episode, the year 793, the holy island of Lindisfarne, the exact moment Christian Europe first learned to fear the men from the north. We are kicking off Season 3, The Great Events. You will not want to miss it.